Hello everyone, just a quick call of action today before the guest video. If you could please like, subscribe and share, that would be much appreciated. Most people who watch these videos aren't subscribed to the channel, so if you could really do that and like the video if you enjoy this guest video, so I can get more guests on the show and get the RBL Talk podcast going worldwide. Hope you enjoyed today's video. It's that time again in the show where I welcome a special guest. As you can see, if you're watching this over on YouTube, I actually have two special guests in this part of the episode today. Welcome, guests. How are we?
Oh, we're good. We're good. We have Champions League back this week. We're excited. We're cautiously optimistic. How are you today, Sam?
Yeah, I'm more optimistic than I was with our old manager at the helm, the one that got sacked recently, not Ruben Amorim, just for reference. Yeah, hopefully it should be a good game for both teams. But yeah, thank you for inviting us on. I appreciate it.
Yeah, you're welcome, lads. So please introduce yourselves, who you are and what you guys do.
I'll kick things off. So I'm Richard. I'm one of our lovely quartet at All Things Alvalade. We're an English podcast dedicated to all things Sporting Clube de Portugal. We get some flack sometimes online, but we let it roll off our skins. We're pretty passionate fans. We're based all over. I'm in Canada myself. So, we have like a 5-hour, 6-hour time change between games most time, but we make it work.
Yeah, and I'm the founder of All Things Alvalade. Started in 2018. We've gone through a few name changes and rebrands, but we're pretty much the same product. We've always been, like Richard said, I think the only English-speaking sporting podcast out there. So we definitely have our own sort of market. Some sporting fans don't really like that, but that's fine. I guess being a Leipzig fan, you probably know a lot about that as well. But yeah, we are very opinionated, but we don't let anyone, tell us what to think or what to do. And I think sometimes that's their detriment, sometimes it's not. But I think we stay true to ourselves, and I think that's the most important thing.
I think one thing we do well is anytime we have been wrong, we will gladly go back and say, hey, we missed the mark on this one. That one's on us, guys.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Oh yeah, absolutely. You have to be honest, especially with this. I've made some bloopers here and there, and if I've had to apologize, it would not faze me one bit. And you're right, Sam. As a RB Leipzig podcast, a lot of people don't like that, and it's not just a lot of people around the world. It's most people in Germany. So a lot of people give me a lot of stick because of the simple fact of the global reach of the podcast and everything like that. So speaking of podcasts, tell us about yours.
We call it the Stromcast. So I'll go a little bit of our name. So we're All Things Alvalade, which was kind of the name of the founder of Sporting, Jose Alvalade. And then when we were doing the middle of our rebrand, we decided let's differentiate the podcast bit from the rest of the brand. So we call it the Stromcast, kind of a play on podcast, in homage to Francisco Strom, who was one of the other founders of Sporting, one of kind of their first big athletes at the time, specifically on the football side.
Yeah, and it's fun to see how, like, when we started, it was pretty much just like a Google Hangouts meet where there was no sort of pictures on screen, nothing like that. It was just two guys talking, and then we invited Danny on, who is another member, then Chris, and then Richard is the latest member, and probably the last member as well, hopefully.
We've had a few like awesome people like in between. Like Steph was there. Steph was one of the co-founders. Nando was there as well. We've had a few faces, but we've kind of got our core four right now. And we have a pretty fun group. We have a lot of fun.
And we've been through, just the talk of us to getting guys like a former president of the club, Bruno de Carvalho, was on the club. We've had former footballers come onto the podcast to speak about their time at Sporting. And of course, Sporting isn't just a football club. There's handball, basketball, there's lots of other sports. We're lucky to have a few of those athletes on as well. So we have grown quite a lot. And it's been a fun journey and a long one, though.
Yeah.
Yeah, it would be. I mean, I started the podcast back in 2022 of the RBL Talk podcast, and I literally just started out with a really cheap Blue Yeti microphone and had really no idea what I was doing, speaking into Audacity and just going from there, basically. You all start from somewhere, then, I thought to myself, I'm going to do this properly, and, as you can see, and as anyone that does podcasting for quite a while, you slowly evolve your product into so forth to what it is currently evolving today. And how did you guys come about supporting your club? So Sporting CP being in Portugal, that's not a very common club that's world supported that I'm aware of anyway.
I think it was kind of familial. Like my parents, like, well, specifically more my dad's side, like when they came to Canada, they were big Sporting fans. Him and my grandfather still are to this day. So when I was starting to kind of follow football a bit, that was kind of the team that was always there. Like where I was growing up, everybody really watched Premier League, and like this was at the time of like Manchester United with Ronaldo, and Chelsea's team led by like Jose Mourinho, and Gerrard, Liverpool, and Arsenal had like a contending team with Arsene Wenger. So everybody kind of picked their Prem team, and so we kind of had that. But I always was still following Sporting a bit. Like my earliest football memories are Sporting related, like 2004, 2005. Was when I kind of started following it. It's just kind of one of those things that we've always kind of kept up. I find as I've gotten older, maybe I've turned into a bit of the football hipster where it's like, no, this is my club and I'm going to watch it. And like, I'll still keep up with other teams and stuff, but it's like, this is the main team I support. And people always get kind of shocked by that when we tell them. They're like, well, no, but like, who's your La Liga team? It's like, I don't really have one. What do you mean you only cheer for this team for Portugal? It's like, I don't know. Like, that's just how I am.
Yeah, it's the same for me as well. So it's a family thing. I was always told, because I live in the UK and my dad does, but he originally is from Portugal. He always said, you can support whatever English team you want, but if you support another Portuguese team, you're out on the street pretty much. So I really had no other choice than to support Sporting. But, you know, I wouldn't change it for anything. It's something that, you know, Richard mentioned just about in England as well. People are always like, oh, but who do you support in the Premier League? And I'm like, no one. Because one, I'm sure, as all of us know, supporting one club is like painful enough, and it's so time consuming.
Multiple clubs.
It is so time consuming. If you're a fan, you buy all the merchandise. It quickly gets expensive for one club, let alone two. So yeah, there's not much else for, you know, not much room for any other club. But yeah, it's something that, of course, if you're unfamiliar, Sporting are part of the big three in Portugal, but really it's been the big two with Porto and Benfica, especially in my times of growing up. Yeah. So it's been a lot of tragedy, unfortunately, with us not winning anything. But more recently, we've been on an upwards trajectory, which is always nice. But Sporting in childhood wasn't the greatest accomplishment because we didn't really do all that well. But I'm glad it's turned around now, at least.
They got my hopes up a lot as a kid when I first started watching, because they were always like the so close to doing something awesome team. Like they had this magical run to the UEFA Cup final in 2005, and they're at their home stadium, which, you know, doesn't really happen in football, especially European football. You don't usually get a European final at home, and then they lose. And then they lose the league, like in the last...
Despite being 1-0 up as well.
Despite being 1-0 up as well. And then they lose. And then they lose the league like a couple weeks later. In the next couple seasons, they have some really close, like second place, hotly contested finishes in the league. And like, yeah, they win a couple cups, but then they also lose a couple cup finals as well. And then it was just kind of, that was it. And they slowly and steadily just kind of eroded our confidence and joy for a while. But yeah, the last several years have been a bit more enjoyable. They've been much more competitive. They've actually, you know, won some titles. Like they went 18 or 19 years without winning a league title. They went several years, multiple times without winning a single trophy. So being a Sporting fan isn't always the easiest thing, but I always say like it's almost like a relationship. Like you got to stay there for the good times and the bad times.
Yeah,
absolutely.
And for me, it's always been the point of Sporting. It's always like we'll do well, but there's always, okay, when is the drop off going to come? Even when we won the first title in 19 years, we were on that podcast being like, okay, when is it? When's the drop off going to happen? When
they had like a 9-point lead or something with like 4 games left. I'm like, well, they got to play this team. They'll probably tie that. Then, you know, even if they tie, you know, they got to play Benfica second last week of the season. They're going to lose that one. And then get the last game, they're going to be panicking because they've blown like an 8 or 9 point lead. They're going to lose league. Like just so pessimistic.
Yeah, the least optimistic fan base, I would dare to say, in football, probably.
Yeah.
So if you lads have always been supporters of Sporting, my question to you would be then, when did you fall in love with Sporting?
Oh, for me, it was that 2005 UEFA Cup run. Like they had such a fun team. They had a lot of fun players on that team, like João Moutinho, who's kind of persona non grata for Sporting fans now, but he was like this young, like 17-year-old teenager on the come up. And they had Lietzen, who was one of kind of our great strikers, certainly of this century. They had kind of some of the older statesmen like Beto and Sapinto there. They had Ricardo, who was the famous goalkeeper for Portugal, who just always had England's number in penalty shootouts and was, national team starter. That was kind of when I started falling in love with the team because they just happened to be good when I was watching, and I just kind of stuck. And even some of the subsequent teams after, they had some fun players like Nani, Miguel Veloso, for anybody who might remember him. Like, everybody thinks, oh, you cheered because Ronaldo played. I'm like, I never actually saw Ronaldo play in a sporting uniform. Like, even though I would have probably been of age to watch, I'm like, I had no recollection of him playing for the team. I think we kind of came just after that period of like him and Ricardo Quaresma playing for the team. So that was my earliest memories, and what made me a fan was like that 2005 team that just went on a really cool run, and then they had some fun teams after that, and it just kind of stuck with me.
Yeah, similar thing for me. Of course, you can mention players like Liedson. For me, it was my time growing up. Liedson, Miguel Veloso, and Nani were the ones that I fell in love with. But genuinely, in terms of just falling in love with the club, I think it was more the fact that I have a brother and my dad. We all, every Saturday or Sunday, whatever, we'd all just watch sporting, and that was a good thing for me, just as childhood memories. Even though if we lost, it was still a bonding moment, a time spent with family. So for me, that is sort of when I fall in love with the club. Of course, there are players and there are moments here and there, but I think for me, it just is a symbolism of family. And I think that's pretty much what football is about, really.
Yeah, like I can go back and think of like before games became like readily available on TV or streaming services, like having to gather around a shortwave radio and listen to the game, like this kind of scrambled Portuguese radio signal from wherever to listen to the game before you could watch. And then when games became like available weekly here in Canada, like to subscribe to, like just on your satellite or cable package, it was like, oh my God, like we can actually watch them. Like, this is crazy. Because before that, it used to be like you get one game a week on the free to air Portuguese channel, and it was never a guarantee it was your team playing. It was just a random game.
Yeah, I was the same, Richard. When I first started watching RB Leipzig games, it was very hard to find them in the very lower leagues before they got their promotion into the third tier in the three Liga. Like when they're in the regional Liga, I think it's how to pronounce it. They probably butchered that. But I was watching basically whatever stream I could possibly find on shady links, I guess you could say, and things like that, until, when they finally got into the higher tiers of German football where, TV money is, starting to be a thing. And nowadays it's normally just the first two, the Bundesliga and then the second Bundesliga. But yeah, it's always good to speak to people that are supporting their teams, especially from, for so long as well. There's a couple of things I want to ask you as well about your team. And what is your manager? So who is your current manager and what is your current style of play?
So our manager is Rui Borges. Before we had a guy called, of course, Ruben Amorim, who left Manchester United. Left us a bit high and dry, but we move on, I suppose. And then came in the B team coach, Jacques Pereira, who used to play for us, and he was sort of being hailed as the successor. He was said that he was going to be at this club for the next 5 years and like lead the club to glory. It quickly went badly. I believe in 8 games, he only won 2. So it really did take a turn.
He won 2 games, and like one of them was against the team from like the 3rd division in the cup. So we don't really count that one.
So yeah, it really didn't go very well. But at the moment, Rui Borges is someone who come in from the league. He was at Vitória Guimarães, and he led them to the only team ever to qualify for the Conference League in Portugal at that time, in Vitória Guimarães. And they're currently unbeaten in the Conference League as well, only, I believe, 4 points behind Chelsea. And then he came into Sporting to replace Jacques Pereira. He plays a 4-4-1-1, which is a bit different to the Sporting teams of past, who play at a 5-back formation. So I think there's a lot of still figuring the system out, especially from a defensive point of view. There have been games where we've conceded 4. There have been games where we've conceded 0 in his time frame. So I think it is still a case of working out. And our manager did say this is going to take time for the players to adjust, especially for, the last 4 or 5 years being in a 5-back formation, especially with the youngsters like Gonzalo Inacio, Diamonde have always played their career in a 5-back. So to be coming out of that is definitely a change. But from what we've seen so far, it's been mostly positive. We've dropped points in one game against Vitória Guimarães, which was his old club, in a 4-4 draw. We did lose the final of the Taça da Liga, which is the equivalent of the Carabao Cup in England. But that was on penalties, though, so it was sort of a, fair enough. And the team was absolutely shattered from playing 90 minutes. They gave it their all, and I think that's what everyone saw in that team. But yeah, it seems to be on an upwards trajectory, which is nice. But there's still a lot of figuring out and a lot of adapting to do before we have the final product. And I don't think even Rui Borges knows what his best team is at the moment, because we have so many injuries as well. Arguably our best creator and facilitator, Pedro Goncalves, has been out for the last 2 months. We've had our 2 main midfielders, Morita and Braganta, out for the last 2 months. Gonzalo Ignacio has been out for the last month. Our left back is out for the season. So there's a lot of being sort of trying to fill the gaps, and some of it has worked, some of it hasn't. As I say, it's just a figuring out process at the moment.
I did want to ask you about Pedro. I'm going to probably say it wrong, even though you just said it. Goncalves.
Yeah,
I'm going to try as well as I can. I was going to ask just how big of a loss he is, because he's due to come back soon. I was looking at the lineups and who was out and doing my preview before I had you lads on the show. I said he was going to be a big out and a big miss. Is that analysis correct?
I would say.
Yeah, I believe he's actually coming back after the Leipzig game. It's been rumored it would either be this weekend or the weekend following. And yeah, he is the best creator, best facilitator, and especially on European stages and big stages, you can always rely on Pedro Goncalves to turn up and give you a goal. The goal against Arsenal, for example, in the Europa League from the halfway line, just a clear example of what he can do. And also against German teams as well, he's scored against Borussia Dortmund. He scored a brace. I believe he also scored against Frankfurt in the Champions League group stage 2 years ago. So he, against German teams especially, is going to be a big miss. But in general, people have said, previous manager João Pereira, if Pedro Goncalves was playing, are the results different? And it is hard to argue. I think Pedro Goncalves is, apart from Viktor Gyökeres, of course, is our best player. So yeah, a big miss. But it's also not an excuse for us to go out there and not play to the best of our ability. We still should hopefully get a result. No disrespect, of course, to yourself, but that's what's expected of the players right now. So yeah, it's a big loss, but you've got to try and adapt and overcome, I suppose.
Well, we certainly haven't been very, well, to put it as nicely as I can, very good this season in the UEFA Champions League, considering we haven't won a single game and we've lost winnable games in the Champions League. It's almost one of those things, as your lad said earlier, they get in front and, they're just going to lose it or somehow, not win or anything like that. I've been experiencing that all season this season in the Champions League. So it's one of those things where it's almost, you could almost say it's a given win for Sporting. Even though we're going to be getting into the match shortly and we're playing at home in Leipzig, we almost look like the easy beats apparently of the competition at the moment. I do want to ask another question about your manager though. Just how raw and new is he in his tenure? Like, how many matches roughly has he been at the helm for?
Oh, this is going to be his 6th match, 7th match?
So yeah, this will be his 6th match. He's done 5 in the league. It's only his, I believe, 3rd season in the top flight of Portuguese football. I mentioned before he was at Vitória Guimarães, the year before he was at Moreirense, but he's achieved so much with so little, little budgets and developing players. There's a few players from Vitória Guimarães this window who have moved. One has moved to Juventus, another one is moving to Benfica, and that's all mainly due to how well Rui Borges has implemented his style into the team. So yeah, still very raw, still I would say inexperienced, but he seems to have passed all the hard ones so far. Against Benfica in the league, we beat them 1-0, and that was his debut game. So I guess it really doesn't get much harder than that as debut games go. So yeah, still pretty raw, but I think he's proven himself as a fantastic manager so far.
Mm-hmm.
Will this be his first UEFA Champions League game at the helm of Sporting?
This will be his first Champions League, not his first UEFA game, but his first Champions League game. So an interesting test for sure for the coach.
What's the most memorable moment you lads have had as a supporter of Sporting?
Oh, there's a couple that I can think of.
I'll go first, Sam. Yeah, just because I was at the game and I saw it happen is when we beat Arsenal in the Europa League. I got to see that Pedro Goncalves goal from the halfway line. I got to see us go to penalties, and it is genuinely the worst feeling I've ever had in a football stadium. I felt so unwell. And I was just so nervous. Like I was looking at my Apple Watch and my heart rate was like 140, 130. And I'm just sitting here. I'm not even playing. So yeah, it was a crazy moment, but it's one of them where I feel like, God willing, if I have kids in the future, I could be like, you know what? I was at that game when that goal went in, when that crazy goal from the halfway line went in. I was there when we beat Arsenal. And at that time, Arsenal were top of the Premier League by like 8 points or 7 points. So they were still arguably in that point the best team in Europe at that stage, or the best team in England, rather, I should say. And yeah, that was just a fantastic moment for me to witness live.
What about yourself, Richard?
I'm trying to think. There's a couple. There's one that I always go back to, and it's whenever I get bored, I just go back and watch the highlights to this game. It was a Portuguese Cup semi-final against Benfica from like 2008, and it is like, if you ever wanted to make like a new football fan, this is like one of the games you would show them. It was like a circus game. It was like Benfica goes up 2-0 before halftime, and then Sporting in like the second half goes and scores 3 goals like the first 20 minutes. And then Benfica scores again to tie it, and then Sporting scores like 2 wonder goals to finish it off like in injury time. Like it's just one of those games that like I remember sitting with like my dad and my grandfather and my grandmother, and it was just like, this game is not for the faint of heart. Like we're all just sitting there and had like this and like watching through our hands with just like anxiety. But that's like one of those games that I just like, it just stuck with me because it's one of like, in terms of like the Sporting Benfica rivalry, it's one that people always go back to, as well as like, that's like such an unbelievable game if you wanted to like make a new fan. And like I would show people highlights, like if you wanted to understand like the ups and downs of football and why it's such a fun game, that would be the game I would show them.
The beautiful roller coaster of emotions that is football. So this is the question that I always love asking guests who aren't RB Leipzig fans. And we've had some doozy answers. And as you lads are probably well aware, that we're not very well liked in Europe, or let alone our own country. So how do you feel about us, the club? And be honest, there's no wrong answers.
Like I don't
like
have
swear,
any.
go off.
I don't have any like strong feelings, and I know that's kind of a non-answer. Like I can see why, like especially like very traditional football and German fans would feel strongly because of like they're so against like new money coming into football. I reserve some of that hesitation because it's not like, I don't feel it's like it's as dirty as like the Saudi Arabia money coming in, or like Qatari money coming in, like with PSG, or Manchester City with their owners from Dubai, and you know that's a whole other thing. Like Red Bull is just kind of like, we're just this random brand. Like we know what we are. We do F1 and we do football, and yeah, we have multi clubs. They're kind of the first people to pioneer the multi club ownership. But like I never had any strong feelings when I found out like Germany had a Red Bull team, like Leipzig. I was like, oh, I've never heard of them, because I'd heard of like New York Red Bulls. I think were like one of the first ones really in MLS here in Canada and the United States. So I never had like a strong feeling. I understand completely like where certain traditional football fans feel about it. It doesn't bother me if there's new money necessarily coming into football, provided it's not like dirty money or like there's some sinister kind of sport washing thing behind it. It's just a brand that decided to try their hand at football. And like I can understand that. And like there was no real big powerhouse Eastern German teams anymore, at least not when we've been growing up in the Bundesliga. So to see some more of the Eastern German teams as opposed to kind of the traditional more German teams like the Schalkes, the Bayern Munichs, Dortmunds, Hamburg even for a time. I think competition's good, and you want to see teams compete, and you don't want to see the same teams win all the time. We're very familiar with that in Portugal. I think that's just kind of a symptom of European football in general, is most leagues kind of have their 3 to 5 kind of fiefdom teams that kind of control everything. So I'm never upset when I see new teams come in to compete. Like even when Man City came in and got their money, I'm like, well, it's nice to see like another team besides like the same 3 or 4 come in. But there was a bit more of a sinister meeting with their money and where they were coming from, as opposed to Red Bulls, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I've probably got less of a positive view to Richard about it. But I also think context is important. I think because, as far as I know, Leipzig were the first sort of, Red Bull team, or, part of a big group, like a city group there is now. Mm-hmm. They were the first sort of originators of that. if that happened today, and it's, let's say they were taking over was it third or the district divisions, I don't think it would have got as much flack as it did back then, because that was the first one. You look at now, Man City, they own what? New York, they own a team in Japan, I believe. They own a team
in Australia. They have teams all over now, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And Chelsea are doing the same thing. Even Nottingham Forest owner has now bought a team in Portugal, Rio Ave. He is a shared majority stakeholder in that. But to Richard's point, I think, I don't mind it too much. I think when it first happened, I was more like, wow, like this is like, I don't really agree with it. But then if you look at the Bundesliga in German football right now, you look at Schalke have gone down, I think mostly due to like bad financial decisions.
Hamburg.
Not being able to compete. Hamburg, Hertha Berlin as well, all sort of historic German clubs who I think mainly some of it was due to COVID as well, with not the fans attending, stuff like that. That's how quickly things can change. So I think maybe you might see a bit more of that in the German league to come. I think Leipzig have been an originators of that. Some, that could be a good thing or a bad thing, depending on what side of the fence you're on. I would say now, like I said, now it's fine. But back then, I probably would have had a bit more strong opinion. But in my old age, I'm a bit more relaxed now. So I think that's also something to do with it. Yeah, it's just, I think now in context, it's fine. Like, but I think because they were sort of the originators of it, that's why it's looked on a bit more, badly.
Yeah. My only beef with the Red Bull teams is all their logos feel the same. I wish they did like a little more originality, where like the New York team incorporate like the Empire State Building or something into their logo, or same with like the Brazilian teams they had. Like I wish they just fixed their logos a bit, so it was like you could at least distinguish, like, this is Leipzig, this is Salzburg, this is New York, this is Bragantino from Brazil. Like, I'd love to see a bit more of that, just to have like a little bit more soul, because I feel like the crest for a football team is like, that's your main thing. And just when I feel like the Red Bull crests are just a bit overly corporate sometimes. So if they could uncorporate them a little bit, I'd be a bit more okay too.
Well, that's why we had to change, other side for video. That's why we had to change it to this one as well, because it was too much close to the actual Red Bull logo.
I remember that.
Like the way I see, RB Leipzig, and I've said this on my own website, as I'm going to purposely have a drink of Red Bull here as I say this.
You're not sponsored by Red Bull, are you?
Not at all.
It was.
Bulk money. The team's primary purpose, as they see it, as in the Germans, it's not to play soccer or to represent a community, but to increase Red Bull's brand visibility. The entire organization is, in their eyes, an artificial construct weaponized by an international corporation and brazenly circumventing the 50+1 rules that are supposed to place ultimate control of German clubs in the hands of their fans. So that is, they can basically sell a few more cans of energy drink, as I'm going to take another swig of the energy drink.
I'm more of a Monster fan myself, but
oh no, we're gonna have to cut this episode now. Look, I barely like it, but it's a good skit for the viewers and the listeners and all the haters as well. So
yeah, fair.
Why not? Might as well just play into it. So why not? So your lad said before that you've attended games. Have you attended any games recently over in Portugal?
No, it's a little hard getting over to Portugal from Canada.
So you mentioned that I'm actually going next week. It was on a whim decision that I'm going to watch Sporting versus Bologna, which is the last game of the Champions League. Managed to
must-win game too.
Managed to get a few days off work, which is nice. And this time of year, flights aren't that expensive, of course, from England. I don't know about Canada, of course, but it was very cheap. So I thought, you know what, might as well. I've not been to a game since that Arsenal game in 2023, so I think it's long overdue. But yeah, that is the next one on my list. And I will say I've got a streak that I've never seen Sporting lose a game live. I've been to quite a few games. That Borussia Dortmund one as well, which was the first time we qualified in the round of 16. I believe, Richie, correct me if I'm wrong, 11 years, I want to say, maybe?
Around that. The last time we done it was like 2009, and then we got our teeth thoroughly kicked in by Bayern Munich in the round of 16.
Yeah. And then I went to see Tottenham, where we drew 1-1 at White Hart Lane. I went to see Man City, which, we lost an aggregate, but at the game I went to, it was 0-0. So I don't know if that counts. But we'll take it. So hopefully that streak continues and we can beat Bologna.
So coming into the preview of the current game coming up on Wednesday night local time in Germany, or I think it's Wednesday, maybe late afternoon. What about you guys over there? What's your time zones?
I'm Canada, so Eastern Standard Time, so it'll probably start about 2-3 in the afternoon for me. I'd have to double check the time, but yeah, most of the
It starts at
European games,
5:45 GMT. This one, so it might be a bit early.
Oh, so it'd be happening like right now then. Yeah, so it'd be happening at 12:30, 1 o'clock our time, but which is typical for especially the European games. They usually fall in the early to kind of mid-afternoon, and then most like the domestic league games tend to fall anywhere from late morning to like early to mid-afternoon. Except for like typically the English games, those ones tend to be in the morning, like at like 7, 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock my time.
Yeah, for me, it's going to actually be 4:15 in the morning, if you can
Gosh.
believe that. So,
Gosh,
and I will be watching that. Sorry?
that's dedication. I respect.
Yeah,
that. Well, you get
I
up.
will be watching that live, and I'll also be doing a live stream watch along. So if you lads want to join in, go for it. Yeah, you guys can do that as well. And anyone that's listening to this podcast episode or watching it, if you're watching this on YouTube, you're more than welcome to join in the live stream as well. This is the first time that I believe that both RB Leipzig and Sporting have played a game together. Is that correct?
I believe
Yeah.
so, yes.
Because I couldn't find anything at all when it came to head-to-head stats anywhere on the internet. It's not to say the internet's got all the answers, but
They might have met
very
like
hard
their
to find.
previous life before Red Bull took over, but that would have been long ago even.
Probably not even then, because they
Yeah.
were a like 5th division team basically,
So I get it.
roughly. And so I wanted to just touch base into this, and I wanted to go first and find out, what do you think your lineup's going to be? You said a 4-1-4-1. How do you think your play is going to be coming over to Germany?
Well, I think Gyökeres will start for sure.
Yeah,
I think that's
hopefully.
like your free space and bingo. Rui
So-
Silva, who's our new goalkeeper, will not
Yeah.
be allowed to start though. So it will be Franco Israel. So not ideal.
Yeah. I would say a back four of Maxi Rougeau, who is someone we signed in the summer, with Diamonde and a returning Gonzalo Inacio. He should be able to play in that game as well.
Mhm.
And then right back, Ivan Fresneda. I think that'll be the back four. I do not believe Eduardo Quaresma is fit for this game, or if he is, I don't think he'll be playing the majority of it, probably come off the
Yeah.
bench. Midfield is a question mark as well, because Morita and Braganza are back, but they've only come off the bench for about 20 minutes apiece. So I don't know if they will both start. Zeno de Bast, who's naturally a centre-back, started last game at holding midfield. So I would assume it might be him again, but I'm not too sure. And
Yeah.
then on the wings, I think you've got standard Giovanni Kenda, Jenny Katamo, and then Trincao behind Gyökeres as number 10.
So who are your club star players and your personal favourites? For me, I do a thing in this podcast. Well, I shouldn't say do a thing. I do a part of the show that's called Player Watch. And when I preview the upcoming teams, they're a player that doesn't necessarily need to be the best player on the pitch, but it's someone that I will single out as a player that we need to keep an eye on for one way or another, be it their importance or because we've never seen them before. I recently had a guest on the show from Liverpool, their Irish goalkeeper. I forget their name, but no one's ever heard of him before, and I certainly didn't. And then I said he was going to be player watch for that game, and ended up playing a really good game for Liverpool. And because if you're playing as a backup keeper in any decent European side, Sporting as well, you have to be at a certain level. So who is your club's star players and personal favourites?
I think the stars are kind of, again, like Pedro Goncalves won't be in this game. He would have been one. I think everybody in football knows the name Viktor Gyökeres now. He's just a goal-scoring machine and is likely going to be set for a big move this summer. He's still in this calendar year kept up his goal-scoring form. He's already got like 4 or 5 goals this calendar year alone. I think in the midfield, one to watch that flies under some people's radar is Morten Hjulman, the the Danish international, excuse me. He's our captain, and he is such a driving force of that midfield. Look for him to drop back a lot, drop deep to help out with the defensive duties, but also watch for him when Sporting does try to break in, especially on counterattacks, to facilitate more of that play, especially to the wider players or up front to the strikers, mainly Gyökeres, maybe even Trincao as they make the runs. Wonderful vision on the ball. Little bit of a hot head at times, but nothing like that gets out of control. He is one that I would watch, especially if you're a fan of like your gritty kind of all over the place midfielders. I think he's one to watch out.
Yeah, I agree with that, but I'm going to go for a different player. I'm going to go for our winger, Giovanni Kenda. He is only 17 years old, but he plays like he's been playing professional football at the highest level for years. He is fantastic in a 1v1, not afraid to show off a skill or two. Brilliant in transition as well. Rich mentioned the counter-attacks. He is a very good creator in the team. And I think at 17 years old, the way he's been able to just come in to be a starter, no one, I will say no one, I didn't think he'd come in and be a starter and play as many games as he had. He's been pretty much the standard on the wing, and he's replaced guys like Marcus Edwards, who did have high stock at the time, but is now not in the team at all. And I think that is partly due to how Giovanni Kenda has played. And he's someone, like Richard said about Gyökeres, is someone who's been linked all over the place to Man United. He's been linked to Saudi Arabia. He's been linked to Real Madrid, Barcelona, you name it. And I think, you know, he's impressed, and he impressed in big high-profile games. His debut was actually against FC Porto, and he scored in his debut as well. And the sky's the limit for him. And I think in this game, he necessarily, like you said, it won't be, he will have the best game, but he'll be someone you need to watch out for, because you give him any bit of space 1v1 and he will blow by you.
What can you tell me about Trincao? That was the player that I picked out for the player watch. He seemed to be doing really well in the league itself in Portugal, and he does seem like a player that is able to assist and score goals and possibly even beat a man. I have seen a couple of highlights. What's your thoughts on him, both of you?
I'm a big fan. Like I think his start at Sporting, and you have to keep in mind he was coming off of tough spells at Barcelona, where the kind of the weight of the world was on his shoulders a bit, maybe too much too soon. Had an okay spell at Wolves. So when he came to Sporting, his confidence, obviously, especially for a young player, wasn't where you would like it to be. But he's quickly developed into one of our top players, one of our key players. Tricky winger for sure. Loves to ping a ball in, loves to take guys on one-on-one. He's also got a good goal scoring touch. He's a pretty good finisher. I think that's one as well you want to keep an eye out, especially when he plays out wide. He loves to stretch those defenders thin, which tends to leave room for more of those central players like Viktor Gyökeres to kind of have space. Not that he needs it, because he'll bully players on his own. But he's someone definitely I would make sure you watch out for, because he can make you pay very quickly. He can be a bit frustrating at times for sure, but overall I think he's going to be someone who will be a little bit tricky to reckon with, and someone you'll want to keep an eye on.
Yeah, I agree with that as well. Taking Gyökeres out of the equation, I think Trincao has been our best player this season. I think what he's been able to do, not just under Ruben Amorim, but also in that little spell with João Pereira and now with Rui Borges, has been nothing short of phenomenal. And he is by far our best creator, I would say, in Pedro Goncalves' absence as well. The only reason I didn't pick him for one to watch is just because he has been really tired the last few games. He's one of the players in the squad that has played 90 minutes consecutively over like the last 10 or 11 games, and he just shows a bit of fatigue. I think, to be fair, the whole squad does at this point, just because we have been in every single competition. We got to the final of the Allianz Cup, as I mentioned earlier. We're still in the Taça de Portugal, still in the league, still in the Champions League, obviously, and he's played the majority of those games. I still do think when he's at his best, he can turn it around. Then I think he is at his best, but I think fatigue will definitely play a part, and I don't know if he'll actually survive the 90 minutes. I don't know if he'll get bought off, but I would still say, apart from Gyökeres, he's been our best player this season.
And one last player, because he scored insurmountable goals for you guys. I think it's 20-something in the Portugal league itself. I obviously butchered the name. I'm going to try to say it properly this time. Viktor Gyökeres or something is how you said it, roughly?
Viktor Gyökeres.
Yeah, I said originally Gyökeres or something like that originally before the preview.
It took us a minute too when he first came to Portugal to figure out his name, but we've got him. Yeah, he's a crazy player. Like, he is one of the best players that's come through Portugal, certainly in the last 15, 20 years. Just a goal scoring machine. And I think when people saw his stats, especially just how crazy his stats have been, like his first season, he scored like 40 plus goals in all competitions. They thought like, oh, he must just be like a tap-in merchant, but no, like he's creating plays, like he's taking on defenders. He's scoring obviously with his head. He's scoring with his left foot, his right foot. He's scoring really nice goals. He's scoring those chippy goals that you need your number 9 to kind of score. He's creating space for other players because as he's kind of got this reputation, people have kind of zoned in on him. So he's happy to take on that pressure and free up space for other people. He's a big physical player. He doesn't go down very easily typically. And he can kind of bully defenders a little bit where he's like, I welcome you to try and take the ball off me, but I'm going to make your life a living hell for 90 minutes. He will not stop running. He has a motor. I don't know how he's not just exhausted all the time because he runs so hard. Like every ball is like, I need to win this ball or like my life depends on it. Like it's kind of terrifying. If I was an opposing defender, I'd be, and he was still doing that in like the 85th minute in like a close game, I'd be mortified seeing that like this just tank of a player coming at me full speed, like no fear in his eyes.
Yeah, he is phenomenal. It's like if you were to create someone like on a video game, you'd create Viktor Gyökeres because he's strong, he's fast, he's a great finisher. And the one thing I think is very underrated about Viktor Gyökeres is the ability to create his own chances. He'll have the ball in the corner flag and then somehow he'll end up in a goal just because he is so, Regimes is so strong, so good on the ball as well, and just phenomenal in front of goal. And a lot of people used to say, oh, he only scores against teams in the Portuguese league, especially the lower league teams. But then he scores multiple goals against Benfica, multiple goals against Porto, a hat-trick against Manchester City, goals against Lille, goals against Atalanta. He just does not stop scoring. Even for national team, he's still scoring a lot of the goals. And I still can't believe we've been able to have him for, knock on wood, 2 whole seasons. Obviously, I know January's still not over yet, but the fact no one picked him up in the summer was absolutely mental because it blew our minds. We all thought he was going to go. And somehow, of course, I'm very grateful he's still here. But yeah, he is absolutely phenomenal.
So with the upcoming fixture against us coming up in the UEFA Champions League, what do you want to see from your team's side of view? And what do you expect from us coming into this match?
I'll let you this one, Sam.
Cool. Yeah, with us, it's just keep the momentum up. I think we've been on such good form attacking wise, and the last few games defensively wise as well. Only conceding, I believe, 1 goal in the last 3 games. So we've done very well on that aspect. I'm quite familiar with some of Leipzig's team as well. For example, Xavi Simons, I think, is a phenomenal player. When he was in the World Cup as well, I thought he was very good, and I think he's been someone that has the potential to one day be one of the best in the world. I look at guys like Willy Orban as well, solid defender. Seems like every time I watch the Bundesliga, which admittedly isn't that much, I always hear good stuff about Willy Orban. And the goalkeeper, I'm not going to try and butcher, is it Gulashi?
Peter Gulashi.
Gulashi. Yeah, he's someone as well that I've known for quite a long time. Yeah, I can't say I watch too much of Leipzig. I'm familiar with their team though, just of names that I've recognised throughout the years, like Klosterman. I know he's been there for quite a while. I believe Baku, used to play for Wolfsburg a few seasons ago.
Just a new signing, yeah.
Yeah, so you've got a very capable team. I am very surprised that you've not done that well. Well, I say not that you've not done well at all really in the Champions League, because I do think you have the squad and the players to do so. I don't know if it's a managerial issue, tactics issue, or maybe it's just being on the big stage issue. Sometimes that does happen to
it's
teams.
Bad luck too. Like this new format, I will say, has opened up the doors for a lot more chaos in the Champions League than we would used to see in the kind of the traditional group stages. So we've seen a lot of surprising performances from teams that we expected to do very well, and from teams that were like, oh, you'll probably be fighting for a playoff spot, or you might be kind of in the, not the relegation zone, but you're not qualifying for anything zone. So I think this new format, it's kind of made like every single game counts much more than it did before. Kind of like you do in the domestic league. So I think that's part of it too. And Leipzig's had a lot of tough opponents. Like you guys had one of the tougher draws, I remember, when they did the fixture announcement. I thought, oh, they've got, like, besides us, like several difficult teams.
Yeah, so we started with Atletico Madrid, then Juventus, then Liverpool. Then we had, if I remember correctly, Celtic, Then Aston Villa.
Celtic away, I believe, correct? Which is like just a hellacious away game at any stretch.
Yeah, that was pretty deafening, to be honest. When I don't know if I did a live stream of that, but I don't know I watched it. I don't know if I was watching it at work when I really shouldn't have, but I got some viewing time in when I could. But yeah, and so Peter Gyökeres has actually been pretty poor recently, funny enough.
Oh, really?
Sam. Yes, so I'm actually hoping, and I've been calling for our backup goalkeeper, Martin van der Voort, to come in. And I'm not too sure if you're well aware of Martin van der Voort, but he came from Genk.
Is it Dutch goalkeeper? Am I wrong? Was it Belgium?
No, he's Belgium.
Okay.
Yeah, so is it like essentially could say the predecessor to Thibaut Courtois. Basically, he's that type of goalkeeper. He's very well. He's young. I think he's only 22 or something like that. He's under the age of 23. I know that, and he's got a lot of growing to do. But he's a really fantastic prospect. And from your team's perspective, I wanted to know who you feel is the most dangerous players coming into this match from like RB Leipzig dangerous players from your perspective.
Yeah, I think Xavi Simons definitely. He's someone that I think is just a fantastic player, and I think he was at PSG for a while. I don't think he ever got a fair shot there.
Not at Barcelona, which they probably are kicking themselves for now, I would think.
Yeah, and it's their loss, but your gain. I think, like I mentioned before, I think I said World Cup. I think I meant to say Euros. Whatever the last competition was.
Euros almost blend into one another after a while.
Yeah, that was it. Sorry.
The last international cup, whatever that was.
Yeah, that one.
Exactly. Yeah,
so
I thought it was good.
What do you expect from RB Leipzig coming into this match from a sporting perspective?
The thing is, I expect you guys to be a little pissed off and want to make a point of we're not the worst team in this competition. Like, I think everyone's saying like,
oh, Sporting, go for a win.
You absolutely have to go for a win. And I think everyone's at this point saying like, well, these games mean nothing to them. It's like, no, you still have your pride to play for. And like, even if you nick a couple games, you play spoiler for someone, that does a lot, especially when you come back to your domestic competitions. Like, that confidence will carry over if you're able to nick a win against a good team. Like, if you nick a win against us, that's only they're gonna say, hey, like, we beat the number one team in Portugal, on a team that has taken on the likes of like Man City and Leo, like some good teams. It's gonna say to your players like, we are better than what they think we are, and we know what we are. So I expect this to be a very difficult game. And I know Leipzig's kind of the away game is can be a little bit tricky at times. We won't actually have a lot of away fans, say for anybody who's able to get some kind of scalp tickets, because our fans have actually been banned from attending the away game because of some shenanigans in their last couple games with pyrotechnics and stuff. So
I will say
have behind us.
It might be a repeat. I can't remember what game it was. I think it was in the Camp Nou, where I think it was Frankfurt fans went into the home stadium.
They bought up all the tickets on the secondary market.
I think you might see a few Sporting fans do the same, to be honest.
For sure. But yeah, we won't have like our traditional like supporters club or ultras, if you will, like in the away section. Like, that section will be basically empty unless they open it up for Leipzig fans. But yeah, I expect a lot of Sporting fans will have probably still found a way to get a ticket on a StubHub or secondary market in Europe. And you'll probably see a couple smaller pockets here and there and everywhere around the stadium.
Hopefully the Sporting fans can come and make it over, because most teams in the Bundesliga normally boycott us or something like that. So it would be good to have some away fans, especially international fans, jumping on into the Red Bull Arena. What about yourself, Sam? What do you expect from us coming into this match?
Yeah, I mean, like Richard said, I think you've got to win. There's playing for pride, and I think there's no point going in unless somehow you maybe think, okay, we're focusing on the league now. You're doing a full rotation. I could see that happening, but I don't think any of the players want to do that. And you still get some money for competing in Champions League, especially winning a game. I think it's like maybe like 3-4 million for each win or something like that. So there's still stuff to play for. I do think Sporting desperately need a win, considering our last two games have been 2 losses, one to Club Brugge and then a battering by Arsenal. So I do think we do need to improve in the Champions League aspect of it. I think in terms of what maybe Leipzig should expect from Sporting is a team full of confidence, in form, And I do think it will be a tough game for Leipzig. But I also think Sporting can't be thinking, oh, look, this team is, third bottom. We're just going to, go on cruise control. Sporting need to, go full throttle as well. And hopefully we can prove that and take the win.
I fully expect you guys to go full throttle because you guys are still in a position to get into that top 8 spot and get automatic qualification into the round of 16 phase from this new format. So you guys have absolutely everything to play for, and I don't expect anything less from a very, very good side over there in Portugal. Just finishing up, I would like to ask you, please tell the listeners and also the viewers on YouTube where they can find you and anything you'd like to plug.
Go on, Richard, I'll let you take this one.
Yeah, let me take this one. All right. You can find us pretty much anywhere, All Things Alvalade. On YouTube, that's where you will find us kind of the most. And on X/Twitter is where we're kind of the most active for the time being anyways, where you get updates on like when we're going live, when we have a podcast, when we have like a new video. You can like, subscribe, share, whatever. But we're usually weekly on the podcast. We typically try to shoot for middle of the week depending on the game. That's where you'll find us, All Things Alvalade on Twitter, All Things Alvalade on YouTube as well.
Thank you very much for your time. I do have one more question. Used to be a surprise question, but one time I recorded with someone, we waited around about 45 minutes just to get them to answer the question. So now it comes pre-sent in the list of rough guide of what is going to be talked about in the episode. So the show tradition question is, what's one question you wish I'd have asked you guys, and how would you have answered?
Ooh.
That's a good.
Well, see, I saw this one, but I really wasn't sure what to. I really enjoyed the question about Leipzig, how you feel about it, because I feel like there are some club metrics that will probably try and hide away from that fact. Like, you don't want to put that out there, you don't want other people's opinion. So I did respect that question.
Yeah, I appreciate that question.
I genuinely don't know.
I was gonna say, one question I thought maybe you would have asked is how much we do follow the Bundesliga, and if we don't like follow like a specific team like a Leipzig, is there a team we do follow or have like a bit of a soft spot for?
Is there a team that you have a soft spot for?
I've always, it's not Bayern. I have friends who are big Bayern Munich fans. I've always kind of had a soft spot for like Dortmund and Schalke. Those have all, even though they're rivals, like those are always they've always had like players I really, really enjoyed watching them play. Like I remember when Dortmund had those awesome teams coached by like Jurgen Klopp. I remember like Schalke, like going like Champions League semifinals, guys like Manuel Neuer in goal, and they've produced guys like Toni Kroos. So those are always two teams that I've always kind of enjoyed. No, it's kind of like, I hope you're doing well. I hope you guys do okay. Obviously this season, I know Dortmund especially have been very let down by themselves domestically. I know they started off very strong in the Champions League, as they were obviously beating finalists to Real Madrid last year.
Yeah, for me, not a team in the Bundesliga, but I went to Berlin a few years ago and I got to see the stadium tour of Hertha Berlin, and I thought it was a magnificent stadium. I believe that was actually the year they went down, was the year I went, like the season they were going down was the season I went.
Gosh, it was so your fault.
Maybe it is. But no, I really enjoyed the stadium, and like the history behind it as well was fascinating to watch as well. In terms of one to watch, I really can't say. I only have a connection to one club, unfortunately, and that is the one I'm wearing right now.
That's fair.
No, not unfortunate at all. Finally, just any score predictions for this game?
Because we're gonna we do a challenge on our show where we predict the scores, and like we get like a point system for like, if you get a goal scorer, that's a point. If you get like the result, like if you get like the actual score line, that's 2 points. If you get like the result, like you guessed the win, but it was the wrong score line, you get a point. So I'm going to go with a 2-1 win to Sporting. It's going to be a very hard fought game. I think even Leipzig might take the lead early on, probably, to set the tone.
Yeah, I think 3-1. You mentioned your goalkeeper. Our goalkeeper is just as bad. It's a really weak point of the team.
The irresistible force versus the movable object.
Yeah, it really is. Our keeper, that's why we signed a new one, because our last two were so bad that we signed a new one. Unfortunately, due to registration rules, he can't come in. So it'll be Franco Israel. And I do like the guy, don't get me wrong, but I just don't think he's very good at the moment. But yeah, I think you guys will definitely score. But I think Viktor Gyökeres is, like I said, he's like a video game character. He's like a cheat code. So I think Viktor Gyökeres will push us over the line.
I tend to agree with you, lads. I honestly think it's going to be a 2-1 win game, but it's not going to be for RB Leipzig. I could be wrong, as I have been proven wrong before, but I do think Sporting will be taking it, because the simple fact is we've just been playing too poorly, and you guys will come out too hard, and just basically sure determination and quality will still get you over the line. So thank you very much for coming onto the show. It's been an absolute pleasure having you.
Thank you so much for having us. We really appreciate it. We're glad to connect. We're always happy to connect with football fans anywhere. That's always the one common thing. So we appreciate you letting us on and just kind of ramble on about football and our love of sporting.
Yeah, thanks so much.
You're welcome. If you'd like to see Sam and Richard over there at All Things Alvalade, make sure that you check the links in the show notes. If you've enjoyed this guest video, please make sure that you like and you subscribe. If you are watching this on YouTube and also on podcasts, please make sure that you click that follow button and follow the podcast all around social media. Until next time, I've been Justin Crozer. Bye-bye for now.